Good evening. Thank you for joining us here at Wayne State University School of Medicine's Google Hangout tonight. My name is Jamie Fox. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management here at the School of Medicine. And tonight, it's my pleasure to serve you as the Google Hangout moderator. This Hangout's designed where you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions of our admission staff and our current students. Our current students joining us tonight, and we'll do introductions in a minute, are current members of our admissions committee. And our panel tonight is going to be delighted to share experiences with you that relate to the application process, preparation for the interviews, our style of interviewing here at Wayne State School of Medicine and the process of interviewing, also different types of interview questions that you will be asked when you come to our interviews, and how our admission committee evaluates you. So during the Hangout, if you want to join our conversation by asking a question, you can live tweet us at Wayne Medicine or by using the hashtag WarriorMD. And that will allow you to join the conversation and ask us questions. It's going to be streamed live tonight at wayne.edu/live. Again, that is wayne.edu/live. So now we'll have introductions for our panelists. If each panel member would please share your name and the current position or year in school that you are. And Dawn, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Dawn Yargeau. I am the supervisor in the Office of Admissions.
I'll go next. I'm Evan Kowalski. I am a third-year medical student, and I'm a member of the Student Admissions Committee.
Hi, I'm Kaushik. I'm also an M3, and I'm also a member of the Admissions Committee.
Good evening. My name is Melvin Lunkins. I am the admissions advisor for Wayne State University School of Medicine.
Thank you. Now we're going to start with some of the questions that came in from our student reservations and also on our Twitter feed. So the first question, Melvin, I'm going to kick this one over to you, is about the application process. So the question is, what's the application process to the MD program?
The application process or the interview process. So we have the interview that consists of 3 different segments. You have the long form interview, which could be with a faculty member for an hour. And the faculty member has reviewed your application in its entirety prior to the interview. You also have the multiple mini interviews, MMIs. You have 5 scenario-based MMIs. There are no science MMIs or any type of role playing in the MMIs. They are all scenario based. And then you also have, which is new this year, the student interview, which is about a 25-minute interview with a current medical student who has reviewed your essay and your experiences, and that's what will be discussed.
Thank you, Melvin. Dawn, I'm going to kick the next question over to you. The question is, how does the admissions committee choose between who will receive an interview and who will not?
We do expect to interview about 1,000 applicants this year. The screening process that we have reviews the application in its entirety, looking at academics, health patient care, extracurricular community service activities, research, letters of recommendation to determine who to move forward to interview.
Thank you, Dawn. So a question that is on everyone's mind right now is, how long after submitting a secondary application should you expect to hear about being invited for an interview? Melvin, do you want to take that one?
All right, interviews begin this year on August 7th, and we will be interviewing through February 2018. The first decisions besides early decision will take place October 16th. We do not participate in enrolling admissions, so interview spots for our 290 will not fill up by our application deadline of 31 December. So it's possible to submit your application in September and not interview in possibly until February.
Yeah, if I could jump in there for a second and just say that after I submitted my secondary, I think I waited 2 months before I even got an interview offer anywhere. And that wasn't even at Wayne. And geez, I didn't get my Wayne interview until February. So I didn't know I'd be even interviewing here until January 25th. So you might panic a little bit when you don't hear anything initially, but if you keep at it and, cross your fingers, it just takes a little bit longer than you might hope.
And I can add that our first interview invites went out today.
Woo!
Awesome. Good news, Don. So some of you may have already received an interview invitation, so check your emails. So I have a question, Don. The MMI process, what is it? Can you explain a little about that?
The MMI process is a set of multiple mini interviews. They're all expected to assess someone's behaviors, professional abilities that they might have. They are 5 minutes long with 1 minute to read ahead of time. And they move very fast. And our students, when they walk out at the end of it, they say, I was so nervous, but it was really a lot of fun. So we feel good about that.
Thank you. Evan or Kaushik, what's one thing you wish you had known before going into your interview?
Kaushik, you want to take this one to start with?
Yeah, sure. So before my Wayne State interview, which was it was like pretty early in the interview cycle for me. So I'd only had one interview before that, so I wasn't too sure what to expect. But one thing I wish I'd known was to definitely brush up a bit more on, I guess, like health issues that we're facing nowadays, because obviously it's one thing to be a student, it's another thing to be a health professional. And part of that means understanding where healthcare is and where it's headed. So I'd done, they'd always told us, I'll read a bit about the Affordable Care Act and stuff, but I didn't read anything more than like that. I didn't bother to learn anything else. And I got a question about what's a tough challenge that we face in medicine today. And it kind of caught me off guard for a bit. So I think just understanding that it's not just the ACA or the basics ethics questions you'll find online, but thinking about the challenges you face and what problems you might run into as a student and how that'll affect you.
Yeah, I would say I wish I kind of, in my first interview at a different medical school, I kind of stepped in a pitfall. At a lot of places you'll get, information about the person you're interviewing with, maybe just a name and what they do. Don't try to tailor your questions based off of what that person does, because you might just end up sounding like you're trying to impress them. So I asked my guy, he was a radiologist. I asked him, oh, well, what do you think about, CT scans being used too much and people getting too much radiation? Because that's really the only thing I knew about radiology at that point in my life. And he got kind of offended because I clearly didn't know what I was talking about. So don't just try to impress them by asking questions about what they do. I think that's a pretty see-through attempt at flattery.
Thanks for the tip, Evan. We agree with you. Don, do you have any tips or suggestions on how to best prepare for the interview?
I always think that students need to, first of all, know what they're getting into by finding out what types of interviews they're having. Definitely need to talk to a pre-health advisor ahead of time. I can tell you that at Wayne State, the pre-health advisors come in and they sit in and observe our interview, so they know what to tell the students to expect. So I think if you know what your application says and you are yourself, I think you'll go a long way.
Thank you. Melvin, do you have any tips for preparing for interviews?
Any tips for preparing for interviews? I would say the most important is to talk to your pre-health advisor. Talk to your pre-health advisor. Talk to your pre-health advisor. Very important. Pre-health advisors typically do mock interviews. You should definitely take advantage of that. The AAMC website has a plethora of resources that are very good. Please take advantage of those resources. Answering interview type questions with a mentor, a friend or a mentor, is really helpful as well. You should review your application before interview day so that everything is fresh in your memory. But be sure not to ask questions that are easily answered by reading the school's website or other school material because it just looks as if you have not done your own research.
Thank you. Evan, earlier you mentioned that at some medical schools you may find out the name or the field that your interviewer works in. Dawn, can you tell us what we tell our applicants about the long form interviewer before they step into the interview?
So we let them know ahead of time the name of their interviewer, what field they work in, and if they're an alum or not. And they get that right before they go into the interview.
Thank you. This is another one for Dawn. What should they bring with them to the interview?
Nothing. I always suggest that perhaps if you need a bottle of water, we will supply some, but you're going to be really nervous, so you want to bring extra. I think that if you are wearing heels, you might want to pack a pair of flats to do a walking tour so you'd be more comfortable. But other than that, there's nothing else that you need.
Thank you. Evan and Kaushik, would you like to briefly explain the new student interview component that we're excited about this year?
Sure. So the student interviews, they're going to be a lot shorter than the long form interviews, and the goal is to be a lot lower pressure interview. You know, everybody's really nervous for the long form, and we're just trying to make it a little bit more relaxed and less focused on, you know, big questions like why you want to be a doctor, and more focused on, you know, how can you contribute to our learning community here? Are you going to be a good fit in our student body? Things like that. So those are the main things we'll be looking for, and we have a standardized rubric, and yeah, that's about it. Kaushik, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the big thing that when like Evan and I helped start, like we were the ones that came up with the idea, and we like kind of pushed it through this year and like talked about it a lot. And I think the big thing was we just wanted it to be a conversation. We didn't want it to be, you know, we didn't want students to feel like they're getting grilled with like tough questions. We want them to just have a chance to talk one-on-one openly with a student who's already there and someone who's been through school for a year or two, and get to ask questions and just get to talk to them about their experience so far and get an idea of what their experience might be like as well.
Thank you. Dawn, question for you. How much value is put on extracurricular activities such as shadowing and research when considering a candidate?
I think it's very important that our applicants know.
Sorry, we have a little bit of an echo.
They need to fit the mission of our school. And a big part of Wayne's mission and value, which you can find online, will be that they serve the community that we're part of. And I think those are probably some of the most important experiences that you can bring forward.
Thank you. Melvin, question for you. What kind of interview questions should our applicants prepare for? Do they focus on, you know, personal information, medical knowledge, like current events? Can you give us some?
They should focus. I'm sorry. They should prepare for questions that are current events or questions about their applications. They should be able to talk about their application. If it's in your application, you should be able to address it.
Thank you. Dawn, do you have any more thoughts on that as well?
We're going to look at the entire application ahead of time, so we just really want to know who the person is that is behind that piece of paper. So our questions are going to go into detail as far as whatever you put in the application and who you are.
Thank you. Melvin, a question for you. How long should an applicant wait to hear about a decision after they've interviewed?
So if you interview, the earliest Wayne State or can send out a letter of acceptance is 16 October. So you can receive a letter of acceptance anywhere from 16 October until July 17th when school starts.
Dawn, I'll start you off with this question, and then I'll kick it over to Evan and Kaushik to get their take on it. But first to you, Dawn. What aspect of the interview process do prospective students typically find the most challenging?
Talking about themselves. There's a fine line between bragging and being positive and listing your abilities and showing them off for someone else.
Thank you. Evan or Kaushik, thoughts on the most challenging thing to do during an interview?
I definitely think that the one that Dawn mentioned is probably the most challenging. I think the other big challenge that a lot of students face, though, is relaxing. Obviously, we don't expect you to walk into the room as if it's not, a very nerve-wracking experience, but, 15, 20 minutes into the interview, we want to see that you've calmed down and you're confident now and you understand that, we are friendly people and we're just trying to get to know you. So, keep that in mind if you're 20 minutes into your interview and you're still sweating. Like, relax. We're very kind people here at Wayne and we just want to get to know you.
Thank you. Kaushik, any thoughts on the most difficult part?
Evan took the words right out of my mouth. I think usually nerves is always the big thing. If you're nervous, you're not going to be able to get your point across, not going to be able to be yourself properly. So I think that always seems to be the biggest roadblock for a lot of students. So again, like Marvin said earlier, practice, practice, practice. So if you have a friend or anyone else that can help you, that'll help you get over your nerves. So.
Thank you. Dawn, do you have any suggested strategies for answering ethical dilemma questions?
We are not going to ask a lot of questions that will make you feel as if somebody is judging your decision. We do want to know that you understand what is happening in the world of medical ethics. So I think learning about the things that are going on in the world as far as medicine is important, but please don't feel that you're going to be asked to err on one side or the other and actually make a judgment where someone may make a decision based on that. That's just not the way that we function in our interviews.
And if I could add on to that, I don't think we are going to ask you ethical dilemma questions, but if you express an opinion, you should be prepared to justify that, to, reason it out, because there are interviewers who will ask you, well, why do you think that? Do you think that's true all of the time? Questions like that. And you should be prepared to answer that confidently.
Yeah, and to add to that, we're not judging, what your stance is. I think we look for it if you're going to with your opinion, do you have solid reasoning behind it, and are you able to articulate that? More importantly, you want to make sure that you are able to defend yourself and defend your thoughts, and reason out to us why you believe that, and that's the most important part of it.
Thank you. Evan, I'm going to hand this one to you to start with. How involved is Wayne State in giving back to the local community? If you could share your experience, please.
Sure. I'll share personally what I did as a first and second year student. So I volunteered a lot at the Amigos Medicos Clinic. It's in Southwest Detroit, and it's basically a soup kitchen that I went and volunteered at, maybe 2 or 3 times a month on average. And what I would do is as people were eating their food, I'd walk up to them. I asked them if they'd like their blood pressure checked. And a lot of these patients were, in vulnerable housing situations or homeless. And, it was just a good way to get people thinking about their health and understanding that not everyone in the medical system is going to treat them with, judgment or anything other than open arms. So that's what I did. I had a lot of really defining experiences there, and I think that's that's just one of many ways that a Wayne student can give back to the community.
Thank you. Kaushik, any experience you'd like to share?
Yeah, so Evan talked about like one that's like a medical experience. You get to work and try and help them, access healthcare. And obviously, on the other hand, we have all sorts of non-medical opportunities to volunteer. So I volunteered a lot at Gleaner's Food Bank. A lot of Wayne students go there, and they have a huge need for volunteers, and they really do put your time to use. So basically, you help them organize and set up and like move stuff around their warehouse and get shipments ready to go out. And they're one of the largest food distributors in the area for people in need. So obviously, it may not be the direct impact, like, face to face, which you still have the opportunity to do through other orgs, but you have a chance to spend your time when you do have it to help out an organization that's dedicated to helping the people here that need it. So.
Thank you. Back to the interview questions. We have another one here. It is Dawn. I'll start with you. How do you tackle a question that you've never seen before or that you've never practiced before?
I think the first thing you have to do is pause. You can ask the interviewer for clarification. Maybe the interviewer, he or she will give you a little bit more insight into what they're looking for. And you can only answer it just the best way that you possibly can, give them the best concise answers with your rationale and hopefully some ideas behind it.
You could also just, if it's a really challenging question and you just don't know how to respond to it, you could say, oh, I don't know. And I've never held it against an interviewee if they admit that this is a gap in their knowledge that they aren't aware of. If it's about yourself, yeah, you should probably be able to talk about it. But if somebody lobs a question at you about, something in the Affordable Care Act that you aren't familiar with, don't be afraid to say, well, I'm not sure, I've never heard of that before, and kind of smile and hope that we don't grill you on it more.
Just a friendly reminder to everybody, if you do want to join in our conversation or ask us a question, feel free to live tweet us at Wayne Medicine, or you can use the hashtag WarriorMD, and that will allow you to join our conversation and get your questions into us so we can answer those for you tonight. A question here from MD PhD applicants. Dawn, how does an MD PhD interview differ from a regular MD interview?
So every one of our applicants will, including the MD PhD, will go through the interview day. The difference with MD PhD interviews is that they will interview in the morning with the regular process that all MD students go through. And in the afternoon, they will have additional questions and additional interviews with some of the PhD faculty, preferably someone who has some interest in their specific research that they've already done, so that they can compare notes and talk more adequately about what that research is. And the person to contact would be the Graduate Program Office at 313-577-1455, and they can answer more of your questions about the MD PhD specific parts of the application.
Thank you. Next question. Kaushik, I'll hand this one off to you. Is there an opportunity for an applicant to ask questions at the end of the interview about Wayne State?
Yeah, we'd love to answer questions that you guys have during the interview process. We really look forward to it because it's our chance, obviously, to talk about the school and tell you what we think about and our thoughts on why you should attend and stuff. And both during the long interview and during the student interview, you should have plenty of time to ask questions and get to talk to us about, get your thoughts answered on it. So we always try to make time for it, and we really do look forward to it, and hope that you ask us questions because it gives us a chance to sell ourselves. So,
thank you, Melvin. Dawn's told us that the first interview invitations have already went out. When do our last interview invitations go out? When do they go through?
So again, invitations will go through 2018. So we'll be interviewing through February, and class starts July, and there is a waiting list. So letters of acceptance, can happen up until the day school starts.
Thank you. Dawn, question for you.
Yes.
Is it acceptable to talk about topics that you already discussed in your personal statement or on your AMCAS application in the interview?
I would say most of the questions will be, again, being focused on all those areas of your application that you've already listed. So I think the interviewer typically wants to go into more depth. I think it's fun to, if somebody's interested in fly fishing, and your interviewer has a great interest in fly fishing, that could be your whole interview. So make sure you put down things that you're very passionate about, and your interviewer may have those same kind of passions. They're not going to go too far off of that. They're just going to want more clarification. If you talk about research, be prepared to supply a lot of detail about your research, because obviously that's something that's been very important to you. So yes, it is very appropriate to talk about those things that are in your application.
To just add on to what Don said, this is actually something that I saw for the first time this year that me and Evan both really liked and thought was great. We were both interviewing an applicant, and the applicant was talking about their research, and they actually brought like a couple handouts that helped explain the research with like the diagrams and stuff on it. And me and Evan loved that. Like it made the whole, like, them explaining the research so much easier, because we actually had something to look at that we could follow along with, trying to explain, you know, a bunch of data and stuff. So obviously, if any candidates have like research that they want to talk about, that's not a bad idea at all. Like, don't be afraid to print out like a summary or something simple on a page or two to show your interviewer, because it'll make to them and they'll really appreciate it.
Thank you. So next question, and this goes back to some of our community involvement as a university. But the question is, Wayne State University appears to be focused on diversity and serving local communities. So how does the interview process gauge an applicant's passion for those qualities that are central to the school's mission and values? Dawn, we'll start off with you.
So as I said earlier, I think we are looking for applicants that fit the mission and vision of Wayne State University. But our interviewers will ask questions to try to ascertain whether your experience in those things you listed is surface level or it goes much deeper than typical applicants have. So I think it's very important to make sure that you list on that application the things that you've done, so that they can delve a little bit deeper into your passions and how you feel about working with those types of people, all different types of people, whether they're young or old, whether they live in downtown Detroit or in a more rural setting. If you can show some of those things, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. We just received a live question in from Twitter. The question is, how much opportunity is there for community involvement or community service in Detroit while in medical school? Evan, will you take that one?
I think there is just an enormous amount, so much so that I think a lot of new students get a little too involved and end up having to cut back because they're like, oh, well, I'm actually in medical school. I need to study too. So yeah, particularly in your first year, you're going to have a ton of time for it, and you know, just get out there and explore what there is in Detroit, because there are so many opportunities. Your second year, your coursework gets a little tougher and it gets a little harder balancing that stuff, but you know, I still found time to volunteer at least twice a month. So there's a ridiculous amount of opportunities, not just associated with the medical school. There are outside organizations that if you want to be involved in, you could be.
Thank you. Evan or Kaushik, will one of you briefly touch on the new patient population physician course and kind of review the requirement inside the curriculum for service learning?
Yeah, so the new idea is we want obviously students to be engaged in the community, and we want them to not, this isn't just the medical education, you're getting an education on the type of people you'll be serving and what issues there are surrounding these people in the community. So there's a requirement for having about 35 hours, I want to say, community service and medical, medical service, I guess, so like clinic volunteering and like non-medical volunteering. And this is just to encourage students to try and get out there, experience what Detroit had, like the issues that patients face in Detroit, and on both sides, on a healthcare side and on non-healthcare side. So how are those two connected? And I think that's the entire goal of this, because obviously there's a big connection between those issues, and we want our students to see that firsthand.
Thank you. Next question for Melvin or Dawn. The question is, do you always send out interview invitations on the 17th of each month, or is there a method that they go out on a rolling basis?
I can answer that. So we do have a screening process. So our first secondaries came in after a little bit of a glitch, beginning on July 11th, I believe, 10th or 11th. And as people have completed them, now the screeners are able to start reviewing applications once they're completed. So it must include their letters of recommendation. Then they're screened and they're moved forward. So we will probably send out more interviews later on this week. It is orientation week, so there's a lot of things going on this week, but I would expect our screeners will be able to get through some more, and we're going to, our goal will be to get, at least 50 of them out by early next week.
So another question for you, Dawn, is approximately how many students do we interview per year?
We expect that we'll interview about 1,000 students this year. And we do 20 students each interview session, so 20 each morning and 20 each afternoon for a total of 40. And I think we have about 28 days on the schedule.
Thank you. One more question here. So approximately every year, how many in-state to out-of-state applicants do you accept? And how many total come into your incoming class every year?
We have a class of 290 students, and approximately 60% of them are in-state and 40% of them are out-of-state students, including international.
Thank you. Dawn, quick question for you. Will the interview, the long form interview, is that open or closed file?
It is an open file. The interviewers receive your entire application, including secondaries and letters of recommendation, at least a week ahead of time to review. So they'll start generating all their questions based on that. Be prepared if you maybe had a semester that wasn't as strong as you would like, and if they ask you about it, be prepared to explain what happened and what you learned from it and how you were able to move forward.
Thank you. I want to give another opportunity for everyone else to join the conversation or ask a question that you have on your mind so we can address that tonight. So remember to live tweet us at Wayne Medicine or use the hashtag WarriorMD. And please submit your questions now so we can address those for you. Melvin, another question for you. 1 second. Apologize for that. Are all interviewees invited for every part of the interview, or is each segment a round that can lead to elimination from being considered?
So if you are invited to an interview, you will complete all 3 segments of the interview: the MI, the long form with the faculty, and a student interview.
Thank you. Dawn, we just received a question from Twitter. The question is, I have not received my secondary application yet. When should I expect to receive it? And I submitted my AMCAS on June 22nd. Can you explain that process?
We send out secondary applications usually within 2 business days of having a verified AMCAS application. So if you submitted it to AMCAS on June 22nd and all your transcripts are there, it'll probably take them 2 to 3 weeks to verify it. And then once we get it, it has to run through our system. And then usually within 24 hours, we will have a secondary email sent to your email. Make sure that your emails are correct on your AMCAS applications. We've already had one come in incorrectly, so they missed their first email.
Can I add something to that also? You want to be sure you check your junk email folder, because a lot of times your secondaries will end up in that folder, and you will miss them.
Thank you. Another question. Evan, I'll start this one off with you, and then anyone feel free to jump in and provide follow-up. But Evan, can you give an example of an excellent interviewee in terms of how they respond to questions and engage with the interviewer?
Sure. I think the thing that really does it for me is it's even less about eye contact and more about body language and how engaged they are in the conversation. You know, if you field a question at them and, you know, they might pause for a second and then, you know, consider, and then, you know, all of a sudden they're leaning into you and they're talking and they're animated. Yeah, I think posture is really important. You know, people who interview like this, like way low, I mean, you're putting yourself in a hole to begin with. So I think, you know, engaged body language, have fun with it, you know, don't be afraid to be excited. I had a great interview last year with a woman who was just so excited about the opportunity to go into medicine. And, you know, both me and the faculty member who were interviewing her really responded to that, and it ended up being just a really fun interview. So, you know, don't be afraid to be excited, you know, really engage in the conversation with your body language, and don't be afraid to take time to mull over a question and think about it for a moment before answering.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think some of the best interviews I had were the ones where it was just like a good back and forth, and it wasn't just, you know, kind of like us asking questions and then giving them a response to us, and then like you know, being so systematic about it and just bit by bit, but having a very good free-flowing conversation where we were just talking about the topics. Like Evan said, was really engaged, and they were giving like really like good, thoughtful answers. They looked engaged, more importantly, and they were asking us questions while this was going on. And, you know, it felt more natural than just us asking questions, them giving responses. And those are by far the best interviews that I've had.
Thank you. We have a few more questions coming in off of Twitter, which is awesome. Please keep sending your questions in. Dawn, I'm going to field this question over to you. It is, how do you review applicants that have a low undergrad GPA, but they have near perfect GPA in a master's program?
We are looking for at least 20 credit hours of science, biology, chemistry, or physics in a master's program on the application. And then we basically ignore the undergraduate GPA. It's still there and you have to talk about it. However, we're going to put all of our emphasis on that graduate program. As long as it's in the sciences, that tells us that you now have that foundation and that ability to be successful in medical school.
Thank you. Don, I'm going to send the next one over to you as well. What are the criteria for screening applicants for an interview? Please share what you can.
So we do have rubrics where we are looking at letters of recommendation, extracurricular experiences, community service, volunteer work, employment, sports, hobbies, anything other than those medical things. Then they're looking at your academic credentials. And that's a pretty basic screening. Basically, we just need to know whether or not you can be successful in medical school. And we're looking at research. Then we'll look to see if there's any distance traveled. So if you have overcome some significant challenges, we want to know that. And then we're looking at your patient care experiences. And we're hoping that you have several different roles of healthcare experiences. So shadowing, actually maybe working in a nursing home. There's a lot of different types of roles that you can have. I know a lot of students are scribing now. So the different types of roles to show those kinds of things that a physician might be able to do.
Don, one more for you. Do we have an engineering preference or a U.S. chemical engineering major preference here?
We do not. We look at all the different majors that a student might have. And I think the one question you want to be able to answer in your interview is, why did you choose that major? And is it something you were passionate about? And it's okay to say, I did really good in that area. So it allowed me opportunities to explore a lot of different things and things that I was really good at. So we do not have a preference at all for any specific major. Most students are bio majors, but that's just because they love science.
Melvin, a question for you. How flexible is the interview date? Can you change it? Can you pick out of several different dates? How does that work?
Interview days are flexible. When you receive an invite, you can choose from a few different dates. If you need to cancel, you can call the admissions off. I'm sorry, if you need to reschedule, because you shouldn't be canceling, you can call the admissions office and reschedule.
Thank you. Next question here. One moment. Dawn, what type of leadership experience does the admissions committee look for?
I think leadership is becoming an exceptionally important thing. Physicians are expected to be leaders in their communities now. So what we're looking for is that a student has gone above and beyond the traditional typical. So if you're involved in a club or organization, we're hoping that you may have done a little bit more as you've gotten more involved in it to really take the lead on some of the activities that are going on and kind of help mentor those that are coming behind you. So we really expect that at least one or two of your experiences, hopefully that you've gone above and beyond what just being a member of a club or an organization, that you've actually taken on an executive board role or something along that line. I can also say that I know that, Evan, I believe that you have a wife. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am married. Yeah, 6 months.
6 months. How does that play into being able to study and still being involved in activities?
It's definitely a balance. My wife really enjoys our alone time, so it's challenging sometimes, especially last year. But you find time for family. You have to find time for family. Otherwise, you're going through medical school without any support, and you need that support. So it can be a challenge squeezing in time for your loved ones, but it's something that, if I had to choose between studying for another hour, when I've already studied for 2 hours, and spending time with my family or with my wife, I would always pick my family or my wife, because you just have to stay sane in medical school sometimes. And I know people who get too involved and get too stressed out, and it's a balance. It really is.
Okay, now Evan and Kaushik, you both have questions coming in for each of you, which is great. I'll start with Kaushik. The question is, 1 second, it's going up here. What is the research focus here at Wayne State University?
Okay, so I went to Wayne for undergrad, and I've been here for medical school, and I've been doing research at the medical school for the last 7 years or so now. And I've got to do a lot of different things, which has been awesome. I don't think I could say that Wayne has like a specific focus, because we're so heavily invested in all different types of research. I've had the opportunity to do like basic science research for brain cancer at Carmanos, and then I did clinical research with MRIs in the basement of like Children's Hospital at the Pet Center. And then I got to do clinical orthopedics research this last summer. So we run the gambit in terms of what type of research we do. If there's something you're interested in researching, chances are that you will be able to do that with someone and one of the faculty that we have here. And I think it's just such an open field. We focus a lot on on clinical research with the patient population that we have here, which is obviously a unique and special patient population. So there's a lot of very important research being done there, a lot of like valuable data that can be collected from it. So there's just endless opportunities for it. So I can't even say we have a focus. It's just that we are involved in everything in terms of research. I think for everyone in that field.
Thank you. A question just came in for Evan here. Evan, when interviewing low stat applicants, how do you gauge medical interest, especially out of state?
I assume that the question is kind of asking about medical specialties or things like that, but I guess broadly, when I'm interviewing someone, and this is going to be a focus on the student interview too, I try to really set aside their statistics. I try to set aside their GPA. I try to set aside their MCAT score, because we factor that in to our application process in different areas. My focus is really just to see, what are you interested in medicine? Why do you want to be a doctor? And if you have a low MCAT score and you want to do orthopedics, well, tell me why you want to do orthopedics. I'm not going to judge you for, aspiring to something ambitious. So yeah, and I think a lot of our interviews really try to do that. I haven't sat in on many interviews where we focus on your MCAT score.
Thank you. Don, another question here. What is the process for checking in with admissions? How should students do that when they submit their secondary and receive an interview invitation? So should they check in with admissions? And if yes, how do they check in or provide an update?
So what we do is there can be a really long period of time between the time you submit secondaries and the time that you might receive an interview invitation. I can be really honest with people right now that we already have over 1,000 completed secondary applications, and not all of them are going to get interviews. There is a spot on the checklist that you can upload additional information. So while you're working through this process and perhaps you've gotten a new extracurricular experience that's really exciting and you really want to talk about it, certainly write up a brief paper, not too long, and submit it online. And that way the committee will have that when they're reviewing and screening for interviews and anything else that they do. Other than that, don't check in more than once a month, please.
So just to remind everyone out there, please, you have a few minutes left here. So email us, join our conversation by using @WayneMedicine on Twitter or hashtag WarriorMD to get your last few remaining questions in. Shortly, we'll be wrapping up here, but we want to ensure we've answered all of your questions tonight. So thank you, and please keep those questions coming. We want to be able to answer everything that's on your mind. So another question, Dawn, I'll start off with you, and then if I can have Evan and Kaushik please jump in. The question is it safe to discuss religious, political, or personal beliefs as it relates to the person you've become and how it affected your success?
I think that anytime there is something that has shaped who you are as a person, whether it's religious or political, I think you are free to please go ahead and talk about it. Don't shy away from it because you think it may be somewhat controversial. But I think you always want to be very careful that you don't express your views in such a way that would lead somebody to think that you are too rigid and that you can't appreciate the other side of the political arena or a different, religious view. So it's okay to talk about it as long as it's shaped who you are, but just be careful that you are open to other opinions.
Evan or Kaushik, could you share a little bit about the culture, the student culture here at the School of Medicine from a student perspective, and diversity and inclusion as far as our different student organizations or different viewpoints?
Evan, you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. I think, it's in our mission statement that we're committed to diversity, and we're an organization with, a long history in a city that has often struggled with, handling diversity and ensuring that people of different identities get along. And I think that's really shaped who we've become. So in terms of things that go on at the medical school, there are always events that are designed to encourage cross-cultural dialogue. And there are many different ethnic and racial medical communities, the Black Medical Association, the Asian Medical Student Association. I mean, there's one for everyone, but more than that, I think, is the fact that every medical student recognizes what every other medical student is going through. And I think that brings us together more than any differences that we might have in politics or identity. You know, we're a pretty tight-knit group, even though there are 290 of us. I like to think that, you know, we all share this experience, and that makes us stronger and more together.
Yeah, and to just add briefly to that, I think you will never meet a more diverse group of students than when you start school. You meet people with such different backgrounds in terms of like their education, their life experiences, where they've come from and what they've done so far. And it's pretty remarkable because these are your colleagues for the next 4 years, and you're going to be, you know, studying with them, you'll be in class with them, and you'll be rotating with them. And you will learn so much from them. And it's, I think, one of the best parts of having such a large student body at Wayne and having such a diverse group, that every person has something unique to offer to you and something unique to share with you from their life experiences.
Yeah, and if I could just like go back to that, you know, my undergrad school was 1,500 students, you know, Catholic private school. So when I came to Wayne, it was definitely a breath of fresh air. There were so many different outlooks, so many different people to interact with that I had never really had a chance to as an undergrad student. And I think I was missing out a lot on that experience in undergraduate, and I'm really happy that I came to Wayne for that reason.
Thank you both. Dawn, how are letters of recommendation picked if an applicant sends more than one letter of recommendation in than we've requested?
So we request a minimum of 3 letters of recommendation. We tell students they can submit up to 7, but we do review all the letters of recommendation that an applicant sends in. But I always caution people that the more you send in, the more likely there could be a negative one, which will, it's kind of like putting a bad apple in a barrel of apples, and it'll spoil all of them. So make sure that they're the best examples of letters that can come in. And since you can't see them, it's part of learning who you are and how people see you.
Thank you. The next question, Melvin, I'm going to turf this one over to you to start with. If an applicant has been previously rejected, do you meet with those students and do file reviews? And what do you look for the second time someone applies?
If you have previously been rejected, we do file reviews, myself and the admissions committee will be looking for how you have improved, how your application has improved compared to your previous application, or what you have done to improve yourself compared to your previous application.
Thank you. Dawn, do you have any tips for prior applicants?
I think it's being aware of where your weaknesses and your strengths are. And from the time you submit an application to be working on getting those weaknesses strengthened, and those strengths to be even stronger than they are the first time around.
Thank you. Evan, question for you. Did you interview any California students this year? And if yes, what advice would you give to out-of-state students?
Yeah, I'm sure I interviewed someone from California this year. I think I interviewed 3 or 4 from California this year. You know, there's a lot of people from California who apply to medical school, and I know a lot of medical students in my class who are from California. As far as the interview goes, I don't think we're going to treat you any differently if you're out of state. You know, we're certainly going to love it if you ask questions about what it's like to live in Detroit and what it's like in Michigan. That's always good because that shows that you're thinking about us, you know, that you're trying to consider what life would be like here. Be prepared for us to groan about Michigan weather to you and to act jealous when you say you live in 7 degrees and sunny every day. I don't really know what else. I mean, I'm going to treat you the same way if you're from California as if you're from Michigan.
Thank you, Evan. Another quick question on scholarships here. I'll take this question. The question is, do we give away any full ride scholarships for med school? So what we do is we will award scholarships up to full in-state tuition, which is approximately $33,000 a year. And on top of that, all students are eligible for our need-based scholarships. And you can visit our financial aid page more for information on that. And you can actually figure out for yourself right now how much need-based aid you'd qualify for. So we don't limit students to just merit scholarships. A student can receive merit and need-based aid. And we have quite a few more questions rolling in. We won't be able to get to all of those through this Google Hangout tonight, but we promise to get on Twitter and answer all of your remaining questions immediately after this Google Hangout, just to ensure that we've answered all of your questions tonight. If you have further questions after this, please feel free to email us and we'll respond to your questions. You can also watch this Google Hangout tonight at http://wayne.edu/live. We're going to archive this Google Hangout there, and also log into our admissions webpage to learn more about us. It's admissions.med.wayne.edu. So either way, you can learn more about us. And our email address is mdadmissions@wayne.edu. Again, that's mdadmissions@wayne.edu. So continue to ask your questions by emailing us. We're going to wrap up now. Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. And for the few remaining questions we have, we will respond to those on Twitter. Thank you, and everyone have a good night.